Hi, I'm Marcia Lehman and I'm a Knox County Master Gardener. Today I'm at the home of another Master Gardener where we're going to prune a flowering dogwood, a Cornus Florida. And I've already checked the tree. I know we have some 4Ds, dead, diseased, damaged, or dysfunctional. There is some dead stuff that I noticed. I didn't see disease. So today I think we can do most of it with pruners, hand pruners, the loppers, and of course I've sanitized my tools before we start. And as in many of the other videos, if you watch them, I always like to start at the bottom and work my way up. So let's get started. On this dogwood, I did notice that there were a few suckers at the bottom. This is why I like to start at the bottom. And it's not officially a mulch volcano, but there's a bit too much mulch here, and there's some Bermuda grass growing. So in the area where I want to snip back these suckers, I'm going to pull some of this out a bit so that I can cut them off as low as possible. Okay, so I can see where that sucker is attached. So we'll take that off with the hand pruners. That's not a big sucker. And set that over there. I would suggest that this mulch be pulled back on any tree or shrub. We really want to see the base, the trunk flare, and we can't quite see that here. So there's another task besides pruning that needs to be done here. Then I'm going to move up, and we've got some stuff. I mean, it's nice green growth, but it's in the middle of the tree. And just like many of the ornamental shrubs, we want to get sunlight and airflow into the middle. So this really needs to come out. So that comes out. And you can already see then, oh yeah, so here's one of our 4Ds. And in fact, it just wants to break off. We'll clean that up a little bit, but okay, and then now that I've got that out of the middle, I'll start to work my way up a little bit of cleanup. And the nice thing about doing summer pruning of the things that bloom in the spring is that you're pruning them when they have leafed out. That's the difference between summer pruning and the dormant pruning. And so once it's leafed out, it's really obvious what's dead. So you may or not be able to see this, but you may be able to hear this. There's a little dead twig here. And you can just break those off with your hands if they're relatively small and work your way up looking for the stuff that has no leaves on it and just break them off. And you just get that nice crisp crunch. So from this kneeling position, I've almost gotten everything I want to get. That was dead. And this is really crooked and growing into the center. It's got a little, not very straight, but we've opened up the center a bit. This one, I'll take that one off on the back side here. And then I think I'm going to pause and stand up and resume pruning higher up. We've taken the suckers off the bottom, and from my kneeling position, we've cleaned up anything that was dead, and the suckers. Now as we move up, we really need to think about the budget, the pruning budget for a dogwood. Generally, you hear us talk about you can take 1/3 of the vegetation off a plant, and that's usually the limit. That's the budget. Dogwoods have a much lower budget. It's in the 10 to 15% range. So we want to be careful about how much live stuff we take off. Now, things like suckers don't count towards the budget. Anything that's dead does not count towards the budget. Anything that is diseased does not count towards the budget. So it's taking off the dysfunctional stuff and the pruning for sunshine and airflow where we want to pay close attention to the budget. So as we proceed, I will attempt to differentiate when I'm taking off something dead versus when I'm pruning for airflow and working against the budget. And what's difficult is, you know, when we use the 30% rule, that's an easier thing for me to picture. 10 to 15% is about half of that. So the way to think about it is, if you were to cut this down completely and make a pile of debris, what we take off today of dysfunctional and pruning for airflow and sunshine should be 10 to 15% of what the total pile would look like. Now, if you can make a mental picture, that's great. If you can't, then just be really judicious. But again, anything that's dead or diseased does not count towards the budget. So as I just work here on this branch that I've pulled down a bit, this is dead, doesn't count. This one is dead, doesn't count. Down here comes another dead one, doesn't count. So, and again, the dead stuff is easy to find because it's brown and doesn't have any leaves on it. And then as I move back in here, I'm just following this branch, and then I'll move over to this next one. This has some dead on it. And I really like to take the dead with my fingers because it's easy to do, and I get that feedback that yes, it really is dead. It wasn't just defoliated by some other reason. If you get one with no leaves and it just bends and doesn't want to break, well then there's still some life in it, and I'll give it a second chance. But when it goes crack, it's done. It's okay. Now this wants to grow back into the middle, and that's really, yeah, we're going to take that off. So coming into the middle, we'd like to get sunshine and airflow into the middle, so we want to open this up a little bit. And if I look at how many stems we have, we've got the main trunk. Here's a major stem. This comes up in forks, and then we've got another one here. And those are all reasonably spaced. So one of the things we do need to consider is that dysfunctional thing. And back here, we've got this branch that's relatively low and probably hits whoever is mowing the lawn. So this would fall in the dysfunctional category, and as a result, I am going to take that one off. This will probably be the single biggest cut I make, and it's just larger than I could do with my hand pruners. So that just doubled the size of my debris pile. So as I come in around here, a lot of this other stuff is dead that I'm cleaning up, because I keep hearing the crack, crack, crack. Now this is an itty bitty little branch that's growing back in towards the center. And that's how I'm going to proceed. I'm going to focus on taking off dead stuff. We'll pause, you don't need to watch me take all that. And then we'll come back and show you the finished with any other comments. We have finished pruning this, and as I mentioned in the beginning, anything that's dead or diseased does not count towards the budget. So if you look here at the bottom, this is our pile of debris, and the bulk of the green stuff was dysfunctional. We removed that just to assist whoever happens to be mowing lawn. Now, this is one of 5 trees, all planted about 9 years ago in a row on the north side of the house. And I just want to walk down through here and show you how they differ. So this tree next to this one is about the same size, but it also has a bunch of dead stuff that needs to be taken out. It's got a stub here that looks pretty diseased, so that one's going to need a little more serious pruning. Then we come to the tree that's in the middle, the third of 5, whether you're counting from the left or the right, and it's much taller, but it too could take a little bit off the bottom. We've got some dead stuff in here. And then there's a few more crossing branches in the middle that would need to be cleaned up. We come to the fourth tree, which is about the same height as tree number 3, but is much thinner. You know, the canopy is not as full. So why is that? I don't really know. It could be the health of the plant when it was purchased 9 years ago by a former homeowner. It could be the way it was planted. Maybe it wasn't planted quite correctly. And then I noticed that there's an AC unit behind here. So it is possible that the drain pipe from the AC unit, which puts out water, that water may end up on these 2 trees, and that may just make them a little bigger. So a whole lot of reasons why these 2 may be bigger than the others, but it has some cleanup, and there's probably a little more dysfunctional to come off on this one to accommodate whoever has to mow the lawn. And then last but not least is the 5th one, which is more the size of the one we worked on, has a little more stuff in the middle to be cleaned out. Fair amount, whoa, just touch it, fair amount of dead stuff. And as I mentioned, the dead stuff does not count towards your pruning budget. So it's only when you start taking off green stuff that you're really counting the pruning budget. So, yep, we need to clean up the mulch piles a little bit, need to get some Bermuda grass out of those. And then we've pruned 1, the other 4 can get done in the next couple of weeks. Really should be done before the end of August, because remember, pruning stimulates growth, and any growth needs 6 to 8 weeks to harden off before we get a first frost. So I know in mid-June or late June, it's tough to be thinking about frost, but since our first frost here in Knox County comes about the end of October, if you back up 6 weeks, that puts you mid-September. And so generally my rule of thumb is stop pruning by Labor Day, and then you'll be safe. So they need a good 6 to 8 weeks for any new growth that's been triggered to harden off before a frost. And so that's why we generally say finish your summer pruning no later than Labor Day. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you learned something. Go prune like a pro.